Hey everybody, I am Emerging Boat and we are going to be doing a playthrough of Aeon Trespass Odyssey. A bit about myself before we get started and a bit about this game. I've already done a full playthrough of Aeon Trespass. It is my favorite game of all time. I thought I had moved on to other games after I had beaten it. I had done some of the challenge mode, the Menestus Theater. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm sure I'm going to pronounce things incorrectly throughout this entire series of videos, but yeah, I had done some of the challenge mode for a while, and then thought I packed up Aeon Trespass for good, thought I was going to move on to other things. For a while, had even started playing the more recent game from Into the Unknown Studios called Kingdoms Forlorn. Similar structure to the game, similar but different in a lot of different ways. Similar combat system, blah blah blah. And I found myself just craving what Aeon Trespass brought to the table. It is such an engaging story, such a fun story that raises so many questions, answers some of those questions, and then raises even more questions as you're going through. The combat system is just great and meaty and makes you think. And it's just a really fun game. It's challenging, it's rewarding, it's punishing. It is, like I said, my favorite game of all time. And so I decided that I needed to play the entire game again, which is hundreds and hundreds of hours. Is it the best use of my time? No, emphatically, no, it's definitely not. But I want to do it anyway, and so we're going to. And I figured if I'm going to be playing it again, I might as well try to do something else with my time too. And so this time I'm going to actually be recording it. I've already started the campaign. I have some of the background blurred because I am showing some of the map and all this stuff. I've already made some progress. I didn't want to start over because I actually have some pretty good stuff, and I didn't want to start over for the sake of recording, but I just wanted to build up a new skill set and try to do something different. So we're going to take a stab at creating some content and recording the whole thing. So I don't have a professional setup. I'm sure you'll see that as I'm going through. My production quality isn't great. I think I've done a pretty good setup with what I have. I'm currently just recording everything on my iPhone as my main camera, and then I have a webcam as a little side camera for dice rolling and all that stuff. So apologies if some things look blurry at times or if things just aren't consistent. I'm also going to be changing things as I go along into the game. As I build up other skills, I'll probably be changing things about the layout of the videos and all that. My plan is to at least record all the rest of cycle 1. Barring anything, if I just hate recording, then I might stop after cycle 1, but barring anything extreme, the plan is to go through cycles 1 through 5 and just go through the entire game again. So hopefully we're able to do that, and I'm sure my things about the stream will be changing. I also plan to do mostly recorded videos, but I'll probably occasionally live stream on YouTube as well. But we will see with all of that. So let's see. Before we jump into the story, I think the next thing that we want to do is I do want to give some spoiler warnings. I'm not going to spoil any kind of like major plot points about future parts of the game, and there are some really cool things that happen. I may give minor spoilers, mainly accidentally if I'm talking about certain like mechanics that come up in future cycles. I'll generally try to stay away from that stuff, try to keep it relatively spoiler free, but even as I'm jumping into the beginning of this video, in this intro of the game, there are going to be some spoilers in cycle 1 because I've already completed some of the cycle and I want to catch people up on where we're at so far. But other than that, I think we're ready to give some background on the game here. So I'm sure if you found this video, you probably know something about Aeon Trespass, whether you've already watched some other videos of people playing it or reviews, whatever. But I'll still be explaining things as I'm going along in the game, just to kind of give some information about it. But what is Aeon Trespass Odyssey? Aeon Trespass Odyssey is this massive campaign game. It's meant to be played with up to 4 players, but I think a lot of people generally play with 1 or 2 players because each person is generally controlling an an Argonaut or a Titan. Anyway, I'm playing it solo, so I'll be kind of going through everything there, but the background of this is that Aeon Trespass Odyssey is set in ancient Greece. It has a lot of inspiration from Greek mythology. It's based on a lot of Greek mythology. I think inspired by is a little bit more of a better term, because I don't think a lot of, while Aeon Trespass ties into a lot of actual Greek mythology, it doesn't necessarily stick to the same stories that were told in those myths. And so you might see different spins and twists. And with that comes some different storytelling mechanics as well, like false narrator or untrustworthy narrator, whatever it is. I'm not a literature major. You can't always trust everything that is said in this game, depending on who's narrating it. So it makes you think about things. I think for a lot of the things, you kind of just trust it as it comes up, and then you might question it later. But that's something to keep in mind as we're going through the story, is that there's a lot of theme around truth, and a lot of the game is actually trying to figure out what is true from the story you're being told from these different perspectives and characters you might meet along the way. So their main piece of background for what is happening in this game is that, like I said, we're in ancient Greece, and this event happened called the Eschaton, which we don't really know a lot about at this point in the game. And I forget when the Eschaton happened relative to like the time we are at now. I want to say it was maybe within the 20 to 50 years before the current point in time. It was relatively recent. People were still adjusting to it, and the Eschaton was essentially like this giant cataclysmic event that caused all the gods of Olympus to die. So in this world, the gods of Olympus, nymphs, what else? Titans, like all these things are things that are known to exist in this universe. But the Eschaton was this huge event, caused the gods of Olympus to die. And along with that came these things called primordials, which are essentially just giant monsters that are now roaming the world and wreaking havoc, destroying things. And so we're going to see some of those primordials from this cycle. I mentioned the different cycles in the game. The game is broken up into chapters that are called cycles. Each kind of has its own primary story that it's going through, some themes in that story. There's a common narrative that goes through all these cycles. So it does try to tie everything in together. And it's overall just a really, really cool game. So let's see. I think the next point, I'm going to now, spoiler warning, I'm going to start showing some of where I'm at in the game right now. I'm going to move off of this intro, and we're going to see some of the map of Cycle 1, the Cycle 1 area called Crete of ancient Greece. So here we go. Let me change some of the lighting a little bit here just to give a better view. Okay, so this is where we're at right now. What we are looking at on the left-hand side is this giant map of our the current location. So in each cycle, there's a map that you're trying to explore, and you're going around and exploring the map, meeting people. the game is kind of broken up into these three segments called, what are they? The voyage phase, the adventure phase, and the encounter phase. And what that boils down to is, number one, you have the voyage phase, which is going around this large map and just exploring things. You get to choose where you want to go. Some things may come up that it may sway you either positively or negatively to want to go a certain direction or not want to go a certain direction. You have these objectives that you're trying to sail to in your ship called the Argo, which I will cover in a second. But that's the voyage phase. So voyage phase, overworld map, we're trying to explore things. Then there's the adventure phase. While you're going through the voyage phase, you might come across areas that have points of interest that you get to trigger certain encounters and fun things and get to go on these adventures and learn more about the people of the place that you're in, and sometimes even learn more about your Argonauts, which we'll also cover in a second, or learn about the ship. Learn about the other people that are major parts of the story. So adventure phase is kind of going into the story text and learning things. Unfortunately, I don't have a good camera view for being able to read from this, but like we have these, there we go. We have these giant books that come with each cycle. Make sure I'm not flipping to something that has spoilery pictures on it here. As cool things come up, as cool pictures come up in the book, I'll show those. But each cycle basically has this whole little book dedicated to it, which explains some rules specific to that cycle, as well as all the story associated with that cycle. See, I can show, there's this whole kind of like intro or table here that shows the everything about the cycle. We have these adventure hubs which talk about like the different areas that you can go to or things you might explore while you're exploring Crete, as I will try to keep referring to it, which is the location for cycle 1. And I will catch everybody up on some of the story that we've gone through so far in this cycle. But the last phase that I had mentioned is the encounter phase, which is the combat stuff. That's the meaty, juicy part. That's my favorite part of the game. I play this game mainly for the combat, but the story is also incredible and worth playing through. So let's see. I mentioned a few things during that intro, but who are we? Who are we? What are we doing? We're in Crete, whatever, but who exactly are we? We are Argonauts and we are on the Argo. So here's one of my Argonauts. Oh, I gotta switch to the right camera here. What if we do this one? Yeah, there we go. So now you can see this is one of my Argonauts, Olympia. At any given time, you will have 4 Argonauts active. And an Argonaut is a person who was woken up from the Argo. These Argonauts are kept in, from what we know, tubes stored in this ship, and they're quote unquote woken up by this person known as the Old Priest, who's kind of the main leader running the ship right now. We'll get to him in a minute. So at any time we have these 4 Argonauts who are active. Our current Argonauts were, with one exception, which I also get to, our current Argonauts were woken up in the heat of when our ship, the Argo, was under attack by one of the primordials. And so the Old Priest had come in and woken us up, and we immediately had to jump into this battle. That's the Learn to Play tutorial, which we're not going to be showing here, but you have to go through and quickly just wake up, get in this thing called the Balinonian, which allows you to control Titans, and then fight off this primordial, and you are left with a beaten and battered Argo. And our Argo is this. This is our ship. I've painted some miniatures. I painted all the Cycle 1 stuff. But some of the other cycles are in different stages. Some are just completely primed in black and that's it. Others are have a little bit of dry brushing on them. Some are painted. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see if I end up painting some more of those as the cycles go on. Most likely not. It's time consuming. I like it, but it is time consuming. So yes, we have the Argo. Our ship has been broken and battered, and so we had to make a stop in Crete because we needed to get access to this thing called a Daedalus vault, which contains parts that can help us repair the Argo, because we can't set out to sea until we actually go ahead and fix the Argo. Let's see, before I get more into that Cycle 1 story, let me cover some other terms. Yeah, so covered the Argo. Titans. Titans are these giant humanoid figures. They are, I think they're described as being like 10 meters tall. So here is one of our Titans. You can see she's wielding a sick little crossbow thing and also has her little backstabby knife. But Titans are feared and revered kind of throughout the whole environment of Aeon Trespass, throughout Crete, throughout all these different cities in ancient Greece. Because they're large, they're powerful, they're intimidating, but there's also a lot of myths and stories about Titans and their aggression. And so the everyday person is kind of afraid of them. But we store Titans on the Argo, and like I mentioned before, we as Argonauts have an ability to control these Titans using a certain technology on the Argo. It's a room called, I think the room itself is called the Balanonian. Probably pronouncing that wrong as well. But it basically allows us to go in and get into these like tanks of liquid, and we get into the minds of these Titans and essentially start piloting them. We primarily use them in combat. You'll see some of the stories. We kind of might bring them along as like an intimidation factor, a little bit of a tool. But Titans don't really speak as far as we know. They just kind of are a bit mysterious. A lot of the things in this game I'm going to be describing as, I guess I'll probably lay it down on the side so you can see it better. A lot of the things in this game I'm going to be describing as mysterious because we don't know a lot about them, but also because I have a terrible memory. And so even though I've played Cycles 1 through 5, yeah, you won't have to worry about me spoiling things because I, number one, forget a lot of things, and number two, probably misremember a lot of things. So even if I say something that could be spoilery, take it with a grain of salt because I might be misremembering something. So those are our Titans. We start off with just these kind of basic Titans. So here is a Titan sheet. These are referred to as Dreamwalker Titans, and these are just kind of our everyday basic Titans. As the game goes on, we might find cooler, more specialized Titans, but there's abilities on these Titan sheets. These will be relevant when we go into a battle, and I'll explain that stuff more when we get into a battle. So we have the Argo, we have the Argonauts, we have the Titans. The other really important person that I mentioned is the old priest. I don't have any kind of picture, I don't think, to show the old priest, but he is the person who woke us up from our hibernation, slumber, whatever you want to call it. And we don't know a lot about the old priest, but he's presented as this figure who is wise and trustworthy and knows a lot about the Argo. Some of the things that we know about him are that his family was killed in the eschaton, and he went through this phase where he was just lost and hopeless. He found refuge on the Argo when it was, I can't remember where he said he found it, and that place is kind of important. But he lived on the Argo for some period of time. So I mentioned, like, something important to note about the Argo is that this is a massive ship. It's a city ship. It houses essentially a civilization or civilizations of people. There are huge parts of this ship that we haven't even explored yet, and part of the story is like we go through and explore the Argo and find out more about it, which helps us uncover things about ourselves as Argonauts. But so the old priest knows more than we do about the Argo, but even he doesn't really know everything about the Argo. And so, yeah, the old priest is kind of a guiding figure for us and helping us to understand what we're doing, why, where we need to go. He's the one who explained that, hey, this place in Crete called the Daedalus Vault contains things that will help us repair the Argo and make it seaworthy again, or deep seaworthy, whatever. Let's see. So now I think we can talk a little bit more about the specific story of Cycle 1, but I need a quick sip of water. Okay. I'm going to try to be good about muting myself when I take a sip of water because I'm using a wireless microphone, and if I don't mute myself, you can hear me drinking, and this is not an ASMR channel. I hate that stuff, so I will try to be very good about muting, but I can't promise that I'm going to be perfect with it. So going into the story about Cycle 1. So Daedalus Vault. We need to find King Minos to be able to get him to give us access to the Daedalus Vault, to give us the things that can repair the Argo. So we go to Crete, and which is where King Minos rules, and we learn that King Minos is actually missing. And Crete has been suffering since the eschaton happened. There are a few different primordials that are roaming around and destroying Crete, but the land is plagued by this like labyrinthization. Like huge chunks of land are being turned to these massive labyrinths, becoming angular, jagged stone pieces. It's a very crazy thing that's happening, and it's causing a lot of turmoil in the area. But so we go, and when we're trying to look for King Minos in the city of Knossos, who we end up finding are, I believe it was 2 of his daughters. I forget the actual name of the first one, if I can look that up. But she is the one who tells us that, oh my gosh, hold on, I'll find it in a second here because I want to remember this name. Let's see. 8. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm looking in this giant storybook to try to refresh myself on some of the story here. I know it is here. Oh, I think I skipped it. Okay, anyway. So we meet one of the, Phaedra, one of the daughters of Minos, and she's the one who basically tells us that, hey, Minos is missing. We don't know where he's at. We want you to actually go out and find him. He will be able to give you some information, and oh, by the way, you should take one of us, aka another daughter of Minos, with you named Princess Akakalis. She can, act as a guide for you, give you some information, and yeah, just take her along with you on your ship. So we had a choice of doing that. Oh yeah, I can show that there. Beautiful artwork in this game, by the way. It's really cool. So we chose to allow this guide to come with us, Princess Akakalis, and so we have this Minoan guide ally with us. So Minos is missing. We've been asked to go find him. We kind of have our own invested interest in trying to find him as well, because the princesses don't know how to get us access to the Daedalus Vault. So we've been following these clues to be able to try to find King Minos and where he could have gone. I mentioned that Crete is kind of being torn apart by primordials and this whole labyrinthization. Some of the primordials, so here's an example of a primordial. Yeah, I think that's, let me go ahead and turn the rest of the lights back on here. I think we need a little bit better lighting. Boom. Yeah, there we go. So this is the Hecaton, and he's just a bunch of hands. I mean, there's some cows hanging out of his mouth there, but the Hecaton is this massive creature that is just looking to beat shit up and eat things with its hands, I guess. You know, like it has shapes that look like a mouth. I don't know if its teeth are actually, who knows where the hands stop. But yeah, the Hecaton is a thing that actually attacked us on the ship. That's what we had. That's what we were woken up to fight off. The Hecaton is one of the primordials that is, you know, roaming around just destroying things in Crete, alongside of this other primordial called the Labyrintharos. You can see it's this like crazy looking, demented bull thing that has tentacles coming out of it. Yeah, pretty gruesome. And then we have Temenos, who is kind of the main boss primordial, who's been a more focal point to the story of Crete and this whole truth of the labyrinth, as we'll say. Because one of the things that you can notice is that he's got huge chunks of labyrinth on him. See a lot of them on the backside there. And within Crete, you know, a lot of the land is being destroyed. King Minos was not loved by everybody. You know, he created a lot of order in Crete and made it a great place for some people. But he was also a bit controversial because he would sacrifice people willingly to the Minotaur that lived in this, you know, this labyrinth that he built. This is getting a little bit into, I think that some of this stuff happened before I don't remember the timeline in terms of like, hey, when did the Eschaton happen versus all the stuff that happened with King Minos. But King Minos had constructed this labyrinth to contain this Minotaur, and he believed that he needed to sacrifice people to this Minotaur to, I don't know if it was to sate the gods or to prevent the Minotaur from trying to kill people in Crete. I mean, he was sacrificing people to them, so he was killing them anyway. So not everybody liked him. And among one of the people who was not a fan of Minos was Theseus, who sought to overthrow and take down Minos, and was kind of he was a very charismatic figure. He rallied people to his cause and, you know, got people to try to change things in Crete. But it was a little bit of a complex relationship between Theseus and Minos, because Theseus and another of Minos' daughters, Ariadne, was they were in love. And I say were because we believe that they're dead. Everything that we know says that both Theseus and Ariadne are dead. And yeah, so we're kind of exploring some of that as well. There was some information that we learned about Minos. I'm going to read. I'll read a section of the story in a bit. Like it's a end of section or story 2b. That kind of gives some important context about where we're at right now and what exactly we're trying to do. But one of the last things I want to get into before we're actually into the game is that we have a few different groups that dominate Crete. They are the Minoans, the Labyrinthians, and the Hornsworn. And I hate that I'm not giving a ton of visuals in this, so we're going to go ahead and switch over. This app that I have on the side here, Scribe, is excellent. This is a really good tracking thing for everything that you have in ATO. So I'm going to go to diplomacy here to kind of show some of the factions that we have. You can see that I have very clearly preferences into who I've been favoring as I've been going around. But with each of the different factions, you build up a reputation with them. So if you do things that help the Hornsworn, you get reputation with them, and that can help you in other ways. So the Minoans are people who support King Minos. A large group that is a part of the Minoans is the Horned Guard. I still get confused when sometimes I'm reading Horned Guard because they are not associated with the Hornsworn. They are the opposite of the Hornsworn. So that's a little confusing. But you have the Horned Guard who supports King Minos. They're a part of his rule. But people in the Minoans are really about maintaining order and keeping things as the way they were, despite some things like the sacrifices that Minos made of his people to the Minotaur. Then we have the Labyrinthians, who are basically think that life is pointless. These are people who have kind of given up and just think that life is generally meaningless. They want to give themselves up to this labyrinthization that's happening across Crete. They believe that there's ultimately some truth in becoming a part of this larger thing. So you'll see that some people who are associated with the Labyrinthians are fanatical in a way, and others are just people who are jaded and have just don't trust these other groups who are seeking power per se. And then we have the Hornsworn, who is kind of the antithesis of the Minoans. The Hornsworn are the people who really believed in this idea that Theseus was putting forward and followed him, and even since his passing are still taking this idea of change and overthrowing the current rule to heart. So those are the three main factions. I'll explain more about some of these scores and everything as we go more into the game, but we're already pretty far into the video and I haven't actually played anything yet. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? I talked about Theseus and Ariadne. I talked about the factions. So where are we now? We were chasing this ship called the Marathonian because we believed that they had King Minos on board. This Marathonian is run as another massive ship, nowhere near as big as the Argo, but it's run by a group of people called the Simici, who are, I think we know that they're from Athens. They're an Athenian group. And we believe that they have captured King Minos, and so we tried to chase them down. I'm going to read some of that story in a second. Let me think, is there any other major stuff that we want to cover? Actually, before I get into that story section reading, explain a little bit more about what we have in front of us. So, like I mentioned, let me bring back the map view. Options, there we go. We have this overworld map. I'm actually going to go ahead and put the Argo back in its spot so you can see where we're at. We have this overland map that we'll explore during the voyage phase. We have our Argonaut and Titan loadouts down here at the bottom. We have these things called Triskelions, which are for tracking different statistics for a Titan / Argonaut. It's really for the Argonaut, but you have Rage, Fate, and Danger. Rage being the anger that you have, and like Rage basically helps you kind of power up as you're going along in a fight. But if you get too much Rage, then it could kill you. Fate is this, mechanically it's something that allows you to do dice rerolls, but you don't want to get too much Fate because then you are going to piss off the Moirai, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's the Fate, not the gods of Fate, but these deities of Fate that if you get too high of Fate, bad things can happen to you. Yeah, anyway, we'll explain that. And then Danger is kind of health. If you can go up to 9 in any of these things. If you go over 9 in Rage, you just immediately die. If you go over 9 in Fate, you don't necessarily die. You might. And then if you go over 9 in Danger, again, you might die, but we'll explain those things more in combat because that'll come up more in combat. But we have our loadouts here. These aren't really relevant as much in the voyage and adventure phases. They're very relevant in combat, but I just like to keep everything set out on the table here. Yeah, and I mentioned before, so we have 4 Argonauts. There are always going to be 4 Argonauts active at any time. Argonauts rarely die. If they do die, it's not the end of the world, but they can die. And I did have 1 Argonaut die because I lost, I lost 2 fights so far in this campaign. I think that one died, I lost a fight against a Pursuer, who I haven't shown yet, and I lost a fight against Hecaton early on. And so one of my first Argonauts, I can actually show, I forget who it was that died because they weren't with me for very long. Go to Argonauts here. We have somebody retire already? Oh, we did have somebody retire, that's right. Okay. So actually 2 of these are only 2 of them are original Argonauts that were with us from the beginning. That's Anacreon was with us from the beginning, and Oleander's with us from the beginning. Argonauts can die, or they can retire, and it's a way to kind of cycle things through, cycle people through and have things change throughout the campaign. But yeah, we had Aster who died during a fight with the Hecaton. Yeah, it was a trauma card that we drew, and she did not make it. So it's rare for Argonauts to die. Titans die somewhat regularly. Let's see if I go to my Titans over here. I have 10 dead Titans so far, not too bad. Titans are a limited resource. You can see I have currently have 9 out of 10 Titans. You can lose a campaign by running out of Titans, or there's a handful of different ways you can lose a campaign. Let's see, I don't think I was close to losing a campaign, my first campaign, I think in maybe cycle 2 and almost certainly in cycle 5. Cycle 5 is pretty brutal. Yeah, if I get close to losing a campaign in this, I am okay with fudging things a little bit, because I am not going to restart a cycle. That's a lot of time. I'm already restarting the entire playthrough of ATO. But hey, if we had to fudge something, we're going to be honest about it. I did fudge a couple of things in this playthrough. I fudged some rolls on some of my adventure hubs to be able to make sure that I could complete these 2 adventure hubs before we moved on to a different story card. But I'm doing a lot of explaining things. I think I really just need to get into the game here. I think the last thing I'll explain is that we have these different cards. Let me go to this view so you can see a little bit better. So we have our story card, which explains where we're at in the story and our current objective. I'm going to read the story passage shortly that explains how we got to the story card and like, you know, a little bit of flavor for like what we are trying to do right now. Then we have this Doom card, which is you have these, you can make progress in the story both through you can make progress in the story by getting things like progress tokens that help you along with the actual story card. But the opposite of that is a Doom card, and bad things can happen that can cause you to gain Doom. Sometimes it's going on a certain map tile that just gives you a Doom token, or something negative happens in a fight or an adventure hub. You know, you're interacting with somebody, you do this bad interaction, and it causes you to have to gain Doom. Doom can make the game more challenging. It can be a little bit of a snowball, but as you progress through Doom, you know, on this, for example, like, hey, once you get, what is it? We have our Doom counter on our main thing here. So we are on Doom card 2A, and once we get to 5 tokens or more, we're going to flip to this other side of the Doom card, and that's going to have another counter on it. And then once we reach that counter, something bad might happen. Like we might run into Temenos. Wink, wink. Oh, also on this Doom card, we actually, there is a figure there that is somewhat of a, I don't know if I would say leader of the Labyrinthians, but he is a figure of the Labyrinthians. He's known as the Punished, and he's basically the prophet of the Labyrinth. I don't remember a lot of what we've been told about him so far in the story, so we'll just let that come up naturally. And then the last progress thing is this Argo sheet, Inward Odyssey it's called, and this is a tracker for learning things about the Argo, learning things about the Old Priest, learning things about ourselves as Argonauts. Oh, and then, okay, one other thing. For each Argonaut, we have these things called Nemoses, which are memories that, number one, kind of give us some insight into who this Argonaut is, like what things can they remember. As we advance this Nemos, we make progress on it, we'll get a little bit more insight into like what things does this Argonaut remember. But additionally, each of these things has a mechanic on it. So if this one, for instance, lets us, we can exhaust this Nemos ability or this Nemos card to be able to unexhaust a gear card. So pretty cool. Yeah, I have some decent gear starting out. Let's go through a little bit of this app so far. Hull's at 3 out of 5, says it's like the status of our ship, the integrity of our ship. The crew is how the people that we have on board. If either of these goes to 0, we lose the campaign. Argo fate, which is kind of like fate for our individual Argonauts, but it's like this mechanic of fate for our whole ship. Can allow us to do some re-rolls at certain points. And we have Argo knowledge, which is our progress on this card about the Argo. And so the higher this is, the more we learn about the Argo itself. Strangers is a cycle 1 mechanic. It is not necessarily negative inherently, but it can cause some negative things to happen. It's basically how much doubt is kind of being sowed on the ship of the Argo, whether it's just from taking on refugees or people kind of giving themselves over to this this idea of the labyrinth and hopelessness. We have our progress here. Inwards Odyssey, this is, yeah, we'll explain it as it comes up, but some notes about our campaign so far. So we have some tally marks for this princess who is with us, this guide, the Minoan guide, Princess Akakalis. At certain points in the story, we're told to make little check marks for her. All right. We have some cargo. This is from killing primordials. As you're killing primordials, you get resources that help you craft items. For anybody who's watching who actually has played before, you might be thinking, why does he have the Pyramidion? The Pyramidion is a pretty good weapon that I got from, I don't know if what I did was cheating to get this. There is a certain point in the game, there's a Dream of Pharaohs that gives you an effect that can allow you to keep a BP card revealed during keep the top BP card revealed during your next battle, I think is how it's phrased. If you haven't played this before, that may not make a lot of sense, but for anybody who has played this before, that can be really powerful, especially against Temenos, who has a lot of really negative wound responses, and if you can predict what those wound responses are going to be, it's very helpful. I used that in the fight against Temenos because it was my next battle, but the reason I think it might have been cheating is because I think the intent is that it's supposed to be for the next timeline battle, but it didn't say timeline battle, and I didn't want to read into it too much, so I said, hey, screw it, we're going to use it for the next battle. And I got some lucky rolls, and I was able to get Pyramidion. Yes, the way you get that is by doing enough wounds to this guy, this big bad guy who you're not supposed to be able to really do a lot of damage to early on. But we were, and so we got rewarded. Yeah, all right, so let me put some of these things away, and then we're gonna go and read some of the story of Cycle 1 to give an idea of where we are at. I have a whole little shelf over here for keeping all these things. Oh yeah, I didn't show didn't give a lot of information about the pursuer, but we have an adversary who is really just interested in chasing us down and trying to kill us. Here's the mini miniature. He's not on the map right now, but he might get on the map soon and try to chase us down. And if he chases us down and catches up to us, we will have to fight him. All right, so let's go to, what view do we want here? Yeah, we'll go to that. All right, I'm gonna need some water real quick. Okay. So we want to read the end of story 2B. I think that was paragraph 58, just to kind of catch everybody up and set the scene. Yeah, so like I said, I unfortunately just don't have a good view for being able to read from this and be able to see the text clearly on here. I reached out to Into the Unknown about being able to use their official voiceovers for this, so that I'm not doing the reading here. We can actually have the voiceovers for this game are incredible. The reading is a little bit slow for my liking, but the production value of it is so cool, and there's awesome voice actors and everything in there. But and then additionally, there's an app for being able to show the text that's being read through, so that you can actually have a visual of what I'm reading through. So yeah, I reached out to ITU. They said that it should be okay for me to be able to use that in these videos. I wasn't sure like legally if that would be okay. So I'm gonna, for the first few videos, I'm gonna be reading this until I just get some like clarification from them on that it's actually okay. Additionally, their app can't run on Mac OS. So some apps like Scribe, for instance, are just natively supported, or the developers have built it in a way that it can run on Mac OS as well as iOS. But the official Aeon Trespass app doesn't run on Mac OS, so they said they will look into supporting Mac OS, but I might have to find a way to be able to get that on screen some other way if I am allowed to use the voiceovers. So for now, bear with me. It's just going to be me reading. There's not going to be a visual aid for this, but I'll try to do my best. Okay, so this is after having caught up to the Marathonian. The Argo, had previously, we thought we had cornered the Marathonian at one point, and we were going to catch up to it, and we sent out these small fleet of triremes, these smaller ships, to be able to go in and explore. And what ended up happening is that we just got bombarded by like this suicide group of smaller ships who just crashed the ships into the Argo, caused more damage to us. Did not go well. I did not have good rolls in that because I did not really bring any. I brought one reach weapon with me, which was a mistake because I forgot about what was going to happen in that part. But now we've caught up to it again, and we're actually going on board. A fateful rendezvous. Embers. As you journey through the strangely deep river, rolling hills and natural formations slowly give way to sheer cliffs rising seemingly vertically from the waterline. Though far inland, you've still seen fish species native to the open seas, and the water's salinity is well above what you would usually find in a river or even an estuary. One evening, a returning scout notices a disturbing change. This stretch of the river, it was narrower when I passed through here a few days ago. And then you realize the terrible truth. This is no longer a river, but a widening chasm. The whole island is being sundered into pieces. The labyrinth does not want to be contained, says the old priest ominously. After what seems like days of pursuit, your scouts bring news of the Simiki's super trireme, the Marathonian, apparently marooned on a sandbar in one of the newly formed tributaries. Stone-like protrusions suggest it's not a natural geological formation, but rather an efflorescence of the labyrinth. Not wanting to make the same mistake twice, you send a smaller team to investigate. Choose a party leader. There's some instructions here. Maybe I'll give some kind of like visual indicator for like when something is an instruction as opposed to part of the story. But I've already done this, so I'm going to just explain some of the choices that I made along the way. I'm also going to just explain how some of my tests went, because there are some tests in this. Yeah, okay. So give some kind of hand signal for an instruction. I don't know. I'll just say instruction. We don't need to make this complicated. Instruction. Choose a party leader. I think I had chosen Olympia for this, or no, I had the Argonaut that I had retired. I had chosen as leader for this because she had a good Nemos that was good for tests. Okay. Anyway. The party leader for an adventure is generally just one who like is the kind of deciding person for making decisions, which matters more when you're actually playing with other people. But additionally, there's some tests that come along that are explicitly for the party leader, or there's some effects that only apply to a party leader. So you don't know what those are going to be when you're going into an adventure, but yeah. You take a hemiolia and quickly head to the tributary. Not wanting to be spotted, you come ashore in an oddly rectangular bay and journey the rest of the way on foot. The flora and fauna here have been completely transformed by the labyrinth. You feel anxious walking under square shadows of the angular oak trees. Even the songs of birds seem eerily synchronous, as if carefully guided by a skilled conductor. As you close in on the Marathonian, you notice activity on the beach. A ragtag crowd is gathered here, and more are coming down from the hills every minute. These are the Labyrinthians. You recognize them by the maze-patterned tattoos covering their frail bodies. Most of them look famished and sickly, on the verge of collapse, but there are some among them clad in rusted horn guard armor who still carry weapons and have a violent glint in their eyes. And then there are the things. Misshapen yet perfectly symmetrical, humanoid yet made inhuman by many of the thin appendages or limbs or strands or whatever these things are that protrude from their bodies and zigzag in the air like a three-dimensional reflection of the many dead ends of the labyrinth itself. Those fleshy ribbons trembling with each step taken give the creatures the appearance of human hedgehogs, at once funny and grotesque. You suddenly realize the terrible truth. These were humans once. And those appendages, strips of skin and sinew and muscle and veins opened up like a monstrous flower. You don't know how they just still draw breath. So here's some instruction then for some choice that we had to make. Give a little bit of showing of this. So like this is the paragraph that we just read here. There's some on the previous page, and then here's some instruction. The option that I chose was, these people are clearly in pain and are as much victims as the land itself. War and famine made them desperate, and desperation pushed them into the open arms of the labyrinth. If you still want to make a change, you need to be better than the ones who came before you. You try to help them. So because I chose this, party leader had to do a test to see if we, how were we going to be successful in helping them or not. And because we did well in that test, we got to see this specific paragraph 62. As you suspected, these people have been tested beyond the limits of mere mortals. First came the Minoans, who requisitioned their food and conscripted their able-bodied. Then the horn-sworn guerrilla fighters pillaged what was left. And then the famine and plagues, a story as old as time itself. Nobody had to convince these people of the truth of the labyrinth. They sought it out. But there is another way, and they see a glimpse of it in your concerned faces, hear a whisper of it in your kind, caring words. At the very least, they will not hinder you here. Some of them look at you with a glimmer of renewed hope. Will you truly help them? Then some instruction. You may give these people shelter and gain 1 crew. If you do, you gain 2 strangers and a Sisyphus tier, Labyrinthians, diplomacy +1. So we did choose to do this. So we had increased our crew by 1. I guess we were at 5 when we went, or 4 when we went to 5. Then we had gained some strangers, and then we also got a Sisyphus tier. Sisyphus tier is a special resource in Aeon Trespass that allows you to basically mulligan a battle. If you have a battle and you screw it up, you can use the Sisyphus tier to restart it. But there's also a fail forward mechanic in that if you fail a battle, you can still progress through the story with that. And I want to use if I fail battles, I think I want to just roll forward with the failure, but there's going to be certain situations where I want to use those Sisyphus tiers for restarts. Okay, so then our next instruction was if L2 was marked or Minoans at war. L2 marked means we would look at this choice matrix here. Good how I was able to scroll on this before. There we go. So this choice matrix is basically just a giant set of boxes. I don't need to be zooming out, but it's hard to control on this. And this goes across all cycles. So you might make a choice in cycle 1 that could impact something in cycle 5, so on and so forth. A lot of choices are kind of contained within a cycle, but we have an instruction that said if L2 is marked and L2 is not marked, so we don't know, because it's not marked, we don't know why it would have been marked. For some of these ones that are marked, you can write a note to say like why it was marked. So if L2 is marked or Minoans at war, meaning are you at war with the Minoans, which I was, then you would see paragraph 66, otherwise you would see paragraph 63. So we went and saw paragraph 66, which says, the hull of the Simici super trireme was damaged when the ship ran aground. A twisted maze fragment protrudes from the sandbar and pierces the starboard hull like a crooked spear. If there are any sentries on the upper deck, they don't make their presence known. That maze fragment is your way on board, a twisting walkway, gray and slick, almost gleaming with an oily substance reminiscent of saliva. As you head to the breach in the hull, you feel cold and sad, as if the mere contact with the stone surface elicits an emotional response. The inside of the vessel is dark and foreboding, though quite mundane compared to the world outside. This is clearly a ship built in accordance with the Athenian seafaring doctrine, though more advanced than what you've seen so far. You carefully advance from compartment to compartment, from the bilge to the first oar deck and then beyond into a series of holds. You notice signs of a struggle here, chipped wood and dried blood. This must have happened some time ago. You hear distant sounds of battle. This one is clearly not finished. Then there's instruction to say if L2 is marked, see this paragraph. If Minoan's at war, see this paragraph. So again, L2 was not marked for us, but Minoans were at war, so we went to C70. As you turn the corner, you are attacked by the Horned Guard. So again, the Horned Guard are Minoans, so we're getting attacked by some Minoans here. We were able to, actually I'll show this one. So we had a test here, so instead of just a party leader testing, it would have been each Argonaut testing, and it was saying, hey, you have to test this trait. When you do a test, let's see if we pull up. Nope, that's not the one that I want. Yeah, that's the one that I want. When you do a test, you're looking at a few things. So you might see, in this case, it says each Argonaut tests endurance or fury. Then you can gain +1 danger to add 1. So if we were, let's say we were doing this test with Fisher, for instance, we would check a few things to see what her fury is. The test is saying endurance or fury 8+. So if we don't have any bonuses to endurance or fury, we would have to roll an 8 or higher. Each Argonaut has a trait. Fisher's is cunning, so she has a bonus to cunning test, but not to fury or endurance. And then additionally, we have our Nemoses. I'll just take this one because this one has one. So this one has a bonus to courage and fury, so fury applies here. And then her other one has a bonus to endurance and will. So ultimately, oh, actually, the other thing, I need to do this from the app. This stuff is also tracked in the app, which is great. So you can see she has a +1 bonus to endurance and a +1 bonus to fury. So in either case, doesn't matter which one she picks for this, she'd get a +1 bonus, so she would need to roll a 7 or higher. And then the text on this also says you can gain a danger to add 1 to the test, so you have to make this choice before, but you could say, hey, I'm going to gain a danger for Fisher. So now she has a +1 bonus to that, so she would need to roll a 6 or higher, so she would end up rolling. This is a 3, so she would have failed. But you can do, once per test, you can do spend a certain number, spend fate to reroll dice. So we could have spent 1 fate to reroll 1 die during this test, and we rolled worse. So we would have failed this test regardless, and we would have had 1 danger and 1 fate. We passed this test with, I think, 3 people. We failed it with 1. So in this case, there was, try here, a range of outcomes. If I can get this looking right, there was a range of outcomes. 3 and 4 successes were in the same range. So that one said you quickly gain the upper hand and push the attackers back. We got to subtract 1 Argo Fate from that, which was reducing this value, which keeping Argo Fate low, always good. Bad things can happen when Argo Fate's high, and you can lose the campaign if Argo Fate's too high. If it gets above 9. Yeah, 9. So then we got to see paragraph 74. You follow the shouts and the clanging of bronze to the upper decks, where a bitter battle has just come to an end. The deck is covered in bodies, Simicky soldiers and the Horned Guard alike. An older man in regal, bloodied armor nods to you slowly. It's nice to finally meet you, Argonauts, though the circumstances have been more favorable. I'm Archon Militiades, of the Simicky. What happened here?
The usurpers of Crete found out we learned of their secret. They attacked us shortly before your ship entered the estuary. We thought you were there to finish the job, but now we're here and you deserve some answers. Seeing your confused looks, he continues. There's a terrible war raging in the north, one that will decide the future of all Hellas. I've been tasked by the Ecclesia to seek out allies or weapons that could aid us in that war. I came to Crete as an envoy to parley with King Minos. What I found was a corrupt empire run by usurpers and King Minos a fugitive in his own kingdom. In the maze we thought we could use as a weapon, foolish of us to even consider it. It can't be contained. He sighs. Let me take you to our prisoner. Maybe she will be able to elucidate. Miltiades leads you through many compartments of the flagship and stops by a reinforced door leading to what you presume is the brig. We caught her, half mad, on the southern coast. He unlatches the door. The cell is dimly lit, but even in the half-light you can see the hunched woman in the corner, scribbling on the wall. She seems disturbed, but doesn't look like she was harmed in captivity. Xenodice, the youngest princess of Crete, but King Minos only had one daughter, you know, Ariadne, and she died around the time of Theseus' rebellion. I do not know who this impostor is, or how she and her kin usurped the throne, but I do know they want her back as much as their supposed father. So you see, when I learned you were coming for us, I had little choice but to act cautiously. As you enter the cell, you notice the walls are covered in manic drawings and almost illegible script. Xenodice, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Miltiades says softly, these people have been hired by your sisters to find your father. Please tell them what you told me. See paragraph 67. So far in this is kind of one of those situations where we were told some information at one point, and now we're not sure what information is true. Because when we met Princess Phaedra and Princess Akakallis early on, we were led to believe that Minos had multiple daughters, and they were the actual daughters of Minos. We knew that Ariadne was also a daughter of Minos, but now we're being told Ariadne is the only daughter of Minos. And now we're also finding that there's this other person involved, Xenodice, I'm going to pronounce Xenodice. There's another person, Xenodice, who is potentially another daughter or an imposter, if we're to believe the Simici. So yeah, we shall see. Yeah, so what we're being told is that the daughters who we met, and one of the daughters is on the Argo with us, Princess Akakallis, we're being told that they're not actually daughters of Minos, and they are people who came to usurp the throne and take it over from Minos. So, get a little bit of water here. Okay. It's pointless. It's pointless, she says. Go away. The young woman's voice is forced and monotonous. To you, perhaps, but some of us still cling to our silly ideals of sense and purpose. Miltiades clearly knows how to talk to her, because her head perks up. Wow. I'm actually pretty bad about being able to predict who's talking here. So I'm trying to do voices a little bit, but it's not really the best. Miltiades clearly knows how to talk to her because her head perks up. The quicker you tell us, the quicker we'll leave. She turns to you and pierces you with a cold gaze. Was that a trick of light and shadow, or did you just see tiny lines crisscrossing her pupils? When we captured him, the second time, I mean, Minos was on his way to the grave of Ariadne. At least that's what he told us, Xenodice says with a scowl. He knew much of the labyrinth and plague at its source, and the living mountain of flesh and stone. He said it couldn't be killed, that it wasn't here. Madman. She pauses and shakes her head. But Deucalion, my dear brother, wanted the glory of Theseus. The Athenians slew the Minotaur. He'd slay the Temenos and be remembered forever. He bound Minos in chains and led us to the old maze to put an end to the labyrinthian cult once and for all. Deucalion had devised a cunning plan and executed it perfectly. For 3 days our Hornguard army harassed the labyrinthians who congregated there until the abyssal creature arrived. Our warriors sacrificed their lives to lure it to a defunct Manos unit, a machina of Daedalus design made for building cities. But it was not defunct at all. As soon as the Temenos went through, Deucalion brought it to life and, snap, cut the monster in two. She stops abruptly. And? One of you asks. And in the end, she continues, it did not matter. Even as the monster's body began to dissipate, another of its ilk, or perhaps the same one, reborn, rose from the ground right beneath what was left of our army. For you see, the truth of the labyrinth cannot be denied. All is nothing. With that, she slumps to the ground and does not respond to further questions. We know not if Minos survived, says... Oh, no, wrong person. We know not if Minos survived, says Miltiades, but we think we may find answers at the grave of his daughter, in the Sepulchre Acropolis. Sepulchre Acropolis. Nobody save Minos himself and Daedalus the inventor knows where it is located, but Xenodice believes that Daedalus left clues to its whereabouts. She drew us a crude map based on what Minos told her. With that, he hands you a piece of papyrus. Maybe you'll have better luck than we did. Several locations are clearly marked, corresponding to the places of worship of the Minotaur. Now that you know our tale, Miltiades continues, our fate is in your hands. Without your help, or rather your Titan's help, the Marathonian will remain stranded and will surely die here. The Simici and the Argo need not be enemies. Then we got this map from Xenodice, which kind of gives us some points that we should look to explore on the map. And at this point, we're far enough into cycle 1 that we kind of know that this is the overall layout. Like, this is the entirety of the cycle 1 map. So yeah, these are the points we need to explore. Then we have some instructions here that lead us to a choice. So we could choose to, there's actually a few choices. So the first one is deciding if you wanted to help the Simici launch the Marathonian back into the water, or say, screw the Simici, they sealed their fate when they attacked you at the mouth of the Garapodamos. You will not kill them, but you will certainly not help them. We chose to help them. That led us to marking on our choice matrix over here, marking C2. Then another choice that came through, or some other instructions, if you have the Minoan guide, choose the fate of Xenodice. So we had this, we do have the Minoan guide with us, Princess Akakalis. So we got to decide if we wanted to have Simici remain, or have Xenodice remain with the Simici and not tell Princess Akakalis about Xenodice, who is supposedly, they're still sisters, or we could choose to take Xenodice with us and tell Princess Akakalis about her and, reunite the sisters. We chose to take Xenodice with us, so we asked Miltiades to hand her over. And we had to note paragraph 69. Then we had to read paragraph 69, which basically said, when you return with Xenodice, Akakalis is overjoyed. Even though her sister is not fully herself, Akakalis asks for a trireme and an escort to Gnosis so that Xenodice may be delivered safely to the healers there. And we gain, oh, actually, I don't know if I even... Did I actually do that? Well, because I'm at war with the Minoans, I wouldn't have gained any
any, what's it called? Any diplomacy with them. Once you're at war with a faction, the only way to get out of war is through researching a technology that allows you to get away from -10. You can only use that technology once, and then after that, if you get to war again with a faction, that sucks. You're permanently at war with them. So we're at war. We haven't used that technology to get out of war with the Minoans, but we will at some point. We'll get out of that, and then we'll kind of work on balancing out the factions overall. But I wanted to, sometimes a good strategy is to get the faction rating up for a couple of the factions and just say, I'm going to dump all the negative into one specific faction, and then you work on that faction later. Let's see though. Okay. I don't know if I got these tally marks. I don't remember if I actually did that part or not. We'll assume I did. Because we're at 8 tally marks for Macacalis, which is pretty high. So, and at that point, we got this story card, which is story 3A. So that was finishing story 2B, which led us to story 3A. And now with story 3A, we are looking for clues from. Let me go ahead and show this again. We are trying to sail around to these parts of Crete where we can find these Minotaur temples according to this map from Xenodis. So we can find the grave of Ariadne at the Sepulchre Acropolis and hopefully find King Minos there. So it's kind of hard to read. It's a little bright. I had to adjust I had to manually set the exposure on this camera so it could be able to read the dice well. So I don't want to keep changing that exposure back and forth. That's good enough to read here. But basically the idea is that we have this deck of cards for this part of the story. These story 3A cards. And when we go to one of these Minos, what are they called again? The temples of Minos? The Minotaur Temple. When we go to one of these Minotaur Temple sites, we can draw a card. Let me make sure I'm reading this correctly. Yeah, if the art goes on a Minotaur Temple tile during the story phase, then we can draw a card, and we're looking for a few cards that will help us tell the coordinates. Additionally, we can collect these progress tokens, these gold little tokens here, which is equivalent to, on our app, the story 3A progress 4 out of 9. We can collect progress tokens to help thin out that deck and get rid of the useless cards, because if you go to one of those temple sites, you're not guaranteed to find something that will actually help you. It's just giving you a chance. And so by collecting progress tokens, you're increasing the likelihood that you are going to find one of the cards that you need at the temple site. And I think the minimum number of cards, like I think there's 2 cards that are important. So the minimum number of temples that we're going to need to visit is 2, and that assumes that we don't draw a dummy card when we go to one of those temples. And I've already uncovered switch over real quick. If I show this, so you could, on the map we saw that there should be a Minoan or a Minotaur temple in the southwest part of the map. And if we look at one of those map tiles, you can see that this is the symbol that we're looking for on a map tile. So I explored this at a point in the story where I didn't know what this symbol meant, so it didn't do anything for me. I could go back and revisit it, and now I would be able to use it for something. But the problem is that, like, our Argo is all the way up in the northeast right now, so going over there would take a lot of time. and time is also a resource in this game. If we go to this timeline page, there are a maximum of 80 days in this cycle. So if we go beyond 80 days, we fail. You can finish the campaign before 80 days, but there are reasons why you may want to extend, why you may not want to finish it as soon as possible. And I think I'm going to get close to wrapping this video up. I think I just wanted to use this one as like a, hey, we're catching up on where we're at here. On the next video, I think, is when I'll start going into actually playing the story, and we'll get into a battle as well, because I think on our timeline, yeah, we'll have a battle coming up in a couple of days. And days can be relatively short in game. Let's see. Oh yeah, so I wanted to, like, basically my plan right now is that I'm gonna kind of kill some time. Like, I would love to be able to get up to 9 progress very quickly, so that way I get rid of all the, like, I want to only have to visit 2 of these map points. If I need to visit 3, I can, but I'm going to first visit this one in the far east over here. So if we go back to our ship, you can see in the northeast there, I'm going to start going, we're in that northeasternmost tile up there. My plan is that I'm going to start sailing south and then do like a little U and go up this way. And I think the temple is in this location. It's either here or here. And then from there, we'll probably end up trying to hit that one in the far north. And then if needed, the third one we would hit would be the one in the northwest over there. But I think that's all we're gonna do for today. I think we'll just have that kind of intro to everything, and then yeah, in the next video we'll actually pick up where we should be. We'll go through a few days in the timeline, then we'll have at least one fight. Who knows? Maybe we'll end up pissing off our adversary, and you'll get to see him chasing us, and hopefully he doesn't catch us too soon. But I'm in a weird place right now where if he shows up soon, he might be able to catch me relatively quickly just because of the shape of the map, but we shall see. All right, cool. Well, see you in the next video.